Kia ora koutou and welcome. My name is Tamsin Matchett and I have the profound pleasure of being your MC for this evening's event. This is Auckland Council's very first live streamed webinar for candidates. This will be a discussion for those of you out there who are considering standing in the upcoming local government elections to represent your communities of Tamaki Makaurau. Today we are going to cover several topics that will be important to anyone considering standing in this year's election, and our panellists who are joining me this evening will also be able to answer any questions you might have along the way. If you do have questions while you're listening to our discussion, underneath the video that you're watching right now will be a section for Slido, and you can type in your questions as we're discussing. I'll have this, and hopefully we'll be able to respond as we're talking. So kindly joining me this evening are our panellists that I'd really like to introduce to you today. So first here on our right we have Louise Mason, who is the General Manager of Local Board Services. Then we have Marguerite Dalbay, who is the General Manager of Democracy Services. Dale Ofsovsky, who is Auckland Council's Electoral Officer. Then we have Simon Randall, who was a local board chair of the Maungakeke Tamaki Local Board, and Michael Gowdy, who was an Auckland councillor of the Albany Ward. So we have heaps to discuss this evening, so why don't we kick it off? And let's go to Dale, who's going to talk us through the elections process and who is up for elections this year.
Kia ora. So I'll start with some basic facts. Election day, that's the obviously first question, Saturday 12th of October. The elections will be held by postal vote, and there is a 3-week voting period. That's from Friday the 20th of September to 12 noon on Saturday the 12th of October. So what elections are being held? Elections are being held for Auckland Council, 3 district health boards and 5 licensing trusts. So for Auckland Council, there is the Mayor and governing body. The governing body, which consists of the Mayor elected citywide for all electors, and 20 councillors elected from 13 wards. In addition, there's 21 local boards, and they will elect a total of 149 members. So in all, there's 170 positions up for election for Auckland Council. In addition, we have district health boards and licensing trusts. So there are 3 district health boards. That's Auckland, Counties Manukau and Waitemata. And there are 5 licensing trusts for those that live in licensing trust area. And that's Birkenhead, Portage, Mount Wellington, Waitakere or Wiri. There are approximately 1,085,000 electors out of a population of 1.7 million in the Auckland region. And we will have 2 electoral systems operating side by side as we have in the past, first past the post for Auckland Council and the 5 licensing trusts, and STV, single transferable voting, for the 3 district health boards. We have a comprehensive candidate information handbook, which is available online at voteauckland.co.nz or in hard copy. Please get a copy of that. It really does contain all the information that you need to know if you wish to be a candidate. So what are our key dates? Key dates, as I said earlier, next Friday, 19th of July, nominations open. 16th of August, 12 noon, nominations will close. So it's a 4-week period to get your nominations in. 20th to 25th, voting packs are delivered by post, and at 12 noon on Saturday the 12th of October, voting will close. We will declare the results, the official declaration of results, on the 17th of October, and elected members will come into office on the 22nd of October.
Awesome. Thanks, Dale. So we now know what positions you might consider standing for, and it would be good to explore these roles in a little more depth. Marguerite, at the governing body level, what can a candidate expect if they were successful, and what kind of decisions are they responsible for?
Thanks, Tamsin. So the Mayor and the 20 councillors together form the governing body. And the governing body is responsible for making the big picture strategic decisions that affect the whole of Auckland. The very first thing that they do is they decide on the 30-year vision for Auckland, which we call the Auckland Plan, which really sets the long-term direction for our city. And then they also decide on strategies, so like the waste minimization strategy is an example, or the economic development strategy. So these are the big strategies that really are going to guide the investments and the decisions that the body does is to adopt bylaws. So some examples might when can you walk your dog on the beach, and what can you and cannot you do with your dog. A big part of the governing body role is to decide on budgets, the 10-year budget, which we call the long-term plan, and also annual budget. And it is the governing body that sets the rate for Auckland and what Aucklanders will pay. They also monitor the performance of council and controlled organizations, what we call CCOs. So they make a whole lot of other decisions that affect the myriad of services that Auckland Council delivers, and it can be bus timetables, it can be around libraries or public transport more generally. Big investment decisions that are made at the governing body level. So in terms of the commitment, the mayor's role is more than full-time, really. It is a significant both professional and personal commitment, certainly more than 40 hours a week and pretty much 7 days a week. And the mayor has an office that supports them to operate. And that mayoral office, by law, has a dedicated budget, which is there for the mayor to be able to exercise their responsibilities. The councillor roles are also full-time, and they're both daytime and evening commitments. The mayor and the councillors attend many meetings, really, all the meetings of the governing body and its committees of the whole, other committees, workshops, panels, all kinds of meetings where you spend a lot of time in the town hall. The workshop, for instance, are organized to brief elected members on different subjects that they have to make decisions on. And elected members, also councillors, like all elected members, attend public events and deal with constituent queries and engage with the community. So it's very much a public-facing role. And there is a myriad of other things that on an ad hoc basis they will be asked to do.
So as the person in the room who has been a councillor, Michael, what does this look like in reality? What can someone expect?
Yes. Yeah, I have had the privilege of being a councillor, and I think to reiterate a couple of those points, it's regional decision making. It's not particularly local decision making, and it is at that crux of that governance role. It's really cool. You do have a day lined up full of workshops, committees, subcommittees. You get to sit alongside incredible staff and really work through those big policy, meaty issues. So I definitely agree that it's more than full-time. And I often describe being a councillor as it can be the most frustrating environment you're in, but it is also the most rewarding. And I think your ability to level up and be involved and put your thumbprint on the regional growth of the city is a really neat part of it, and that definitely outweighs all the rest of it. So as a regional decision maker, you are based in the city a lot of the time. You have offices here. You're always you've got buckets of reading to do, and you're always trying to think a couple of weeks ahead about the decisions you are about to make. So trying to get familiar with the issues around them, and 80% of the time they're not in your ward, so you're doing a lot of travelling around and just trying to best represent your ward or your community at that regional level. So yeah, you definitely have events most nights and in the weekends. So yeah, it's certainly a bit of a lifestyle. I would say there might be some other councillors that don't quite put in that work, but
we won't go there.
Yeah, let's not go there. Yeah.
So thank you, Michael. So Louise, in terms of this at the local board level, is it similar? How does it differ? What can people expect in terms of the responsibilities for delivering plans and priorities to their communities?
Yeah, thanks, Tasman. So look, the local board role is really about local civic leadership, and local boards are responsible for decision making on local activities, issues and services. So this might be things like planning or upgrades to parks and town centres. It might be about local services at your recreation centre or at your pools or community programs, or it could be about local events, etc. In terms of other roles that we have for local boards, Marguerite talked about regional plans and bylaws, and local boards have an important role in providing local input into those plans and bylaws. So again, things like freedom camping, dog bylaws, etc. One of the key responsibilities of local boards is every 3 years to engage with their communities and develop a local board plan. And this local board plan articulates the aspirations of their local communities and is a very important part of that local board role. Local board members also work with mana whenua and Mataoka. They prioritise spending of the local budget and also monitor that spending and delivery of projects. And they're responsible for building strong relationships with local stakeholders and helping to support the building of strong communities.
Awesome, thanks Louise. And Simon, given you were a local board chair, what does this look like? How was it in terms of your lived experience?
I guess the first thing to say, Tamsin, is that there's no such thing as an average day as an elected member, and that's certainly true as a local board member. Every day is a bit different, and Louise covered the nuts and bolts in terms of what the role is and the sorts of decisions you'll be making, but a lot of that is driven by other people. And so I guess the key bit of advice I'd give anyone thinking about being an elected member, a local board member, is you're always going to have more things to get involved in than time. And so being very clear about what you want to achieve out of your 3 years, what sorts of things are priorities and important for you and your community, and put your emphasis there. I guess also as part of that, staff are there to really support and advise and assist you, and I guess it's making that point that it benefits your community to build that relationship. Some elected members don't quite see it that way. It's your decision whether or not you take that advice, but don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah. And what is it like working alongside other elected members?
This is quite an interesting thing, because sometimes it's a bit of a surprise for people who get elected on a platform, but everyone gets elected wanting to achieve things, and sometimes you're on a board of 7 people. Everyone's been elected for different things, and it takes a majority of people voting for that to achieve what you want to achieve. So the best thing that you can do is build relationships with your colleagues, work together on what you have common ground on, play issues, not people, and then you'll get things achieved. It doesn't. You don't get anything out of your 3 years if you're constantly just one vote in the wilderness. So working with colleagues is really important.
And how do you ensure that you're accurately representing the views of your community?
I guess it's that thing that sometimes the loudest voices, or the voices that are most readily available, aren't always the most representative, and it is a thing that as an elected member there will be people that will contact you, that will be in touch, and that's really useful to get a sense of issues and things that are out there. But the best advice I'd give you is think about who you're not hearing from. Think about which voices in the community you aren't accessing. You make better decisions when you hear a range of views, and it's always in your interests to seek them out if they're not coming to you through the door.
Awesome, thanks Simon and Michael, that's great advice. So for remuneration, if successful, what does remuneration look like for elected members, Marguerite? And also I just like to acknowledge Genevieve, who's put a question forward for Slido, which we will get to, but just to let you know that she's asked about the remuneration for the mayor.
Okay. So the remuneration for all elected members, and that's true for local bodies all around New Zealand, is set by the Remuneration Authority, which is an independent body. So the council doesn't have a say in the way the remuneration is, the levels the remuneration is set at. So for the mayor, the remuneration is being set for the new term at $296,000 per annum. And the mayor can choose to have access to a council car if they so wish. For the councillors in the new term, there's going to be a new system which hasn't been used before, whereby a minimum remuneration has been set for councillors at $106,306. And then there is a pool, a total pool of $430,000, which the governing body will choose to allocate to positions of extra responsibilities. And that includes the deputy mayor, it includes all councillors if they want to allocate more to each councillors, and also positions like the chairs of the committees of the whole, and other positions of the responsibility that they might choose to allocate extra remunerations for. So that's going to be a new system. And it's a little bit different from local boards, so I'll get Louise to explain how that works.
Yeah, thanks, Marguerite. So look, for local boards, the remuneration range is different for each board. And as Marguerite explained about the Remuneration Authority, they set a ranking for the local boards, and this takes into account different factors. This includes population, the total assets in the board, expenditure and social deprivation. So that's what the ranking is based on. We have a different rate for the chair. The deputy chair receives 60% of the chair's remuneration, and local boards receive 50% of the chair's remuneration. So for the new term, the remuneration of the chairs will range between $85,000 to $99,000, and for members, the figure is between $44,000 to $49,000. Now, look, I'll just also note for Waiheke and Aotea Great Barrier, the rates are lower because they have a smaller population. So that's basically the remuneration for the local boards.
And Marguerite, do they receive additional reimbursement payments for the work that they're doing as an elected member?
So the Remuneration Authority also set up the rate of some other expenses that can be reimbursed. The most obvious one is about transport costs, so whether it's public transport or the use of your car. And we've got an elected member expense policy that outlines all those expenses and what elected members can claim. So that's something that we can explain in more detail when people are elected and when they come into office. But there's one thing that I think is really important to emphasize, and that is that elected members are basically considered to be self-employed. So they are responsible for their own taxes. So it's really important if you're elected that you get some financial and tax advice, because you will have to cover your own taxes and you will also have to cover your ACC levies. So don't get caught. If you get elected, get advice and get ready.
Okay, Marguerite, we also have a question here from Sarah via Slido. Kia ora, Sarah. Why is remuneration so poor? This role requires strategic expertise and a huge time commitment.
So obviously the councils do not have a say in how the remuneration is set. This is decided by the Remuneration Authority. They have done a very thorough review of remuneration throughout the country over the last 18 months, and they have established the rates based on what they believe is fair remuneration, but also taking into account the fact that they consider that being an elected member is a commitment to your community. And they set the remuneration of the mayor of Auckland as the biggest role in local government, and they used the role of an MP as a benchmark, and from there just decided the ranking of all the different roles. But there is definitely a consideration that a service to your community comes into the role.
Absolutely. So in terms of the support that people can expect to receive if they are elected, what does this look like for elected members?
So first of all, for all elected members, both governing body and local board, we've got a program called Kurakawana, and that is the elected member development program. So it comprises a very comprehensive induction program, so which really helps the elected member to come on board, and then ongoing professional development over the 3 years of the term. And the other thing that we do for elected members is we give them a phone and a computer if they so wish, and so there's also training and support on how to use that technology. So for the governing body, the mayor and the councillors have an office in the CBD, in the Auckland Council House on 135 Albert Street. And there are, so as I explained, the mayor has their own office which supports them, but the councillors are supported by a team of dedicated advisors, which we call the Councillor Support Advisor Team. And they do everything from diary management and help with email, as well as constituent query, advice, research. So they work very, very closely as the right hand of their councillor. And it's important to realize that the council staff as an organization exist to support the elected members make decisions. So we are here to provide advice and support so that they can exercise their governance role. And so the whole organization is geared towards providing advice.
And Louise, what does that look like for local board members?
Yes, so local board members have a local board office which will be based in their local community, and they have a dedicated team that actually helps support them as well. So that team works really closely with them and helps them in fulfilling their role. As Marguerite said, the organisation itself, the wider organisation of Auckland Council, also provides specialist advice and support to local board members, and we also have the local communications team also provides that support as well. So quite a range of people that are helping provide that advice to local board members and support.
So in terms of the process for becoming a candidate, Dale, you might be able to shed some light on this. How does someone get nominated and confirmed as a candidate?
Okay, so firstly, to be a candidate, you must be a New Zealand citizen and you must be enrolled on the parliamentary electoral roll anywhere in New Zealand. You can actually stand for multiple positions. You can stand for the mayor and for the council and for a local board. If you get fortunate enough to get elected to more than one, you take the highest position. You can actually stand for more than one local board, but you must provide a priority ranking. And if you're elected, that's the number one ranking, that's where you get elected to. You can also stand for one district health board, plus any Auckland Council positions, and you can also stand for a licensing trust in addition to the Auckland Council positions. There are some candidate restrictions, however. You can only stand for one ward, and you can only stand for one local board subdivision if your local board is subdivided. And you can only stand for one district health board within New Zealand. If you wanted to stand for a licensing trust, there is a restriction there. You must actually reside in the licensing trust area, or if the licensing trust is subdivided, then within that ward of that licensing trust. So what happens, you want to stand as a candidate, so nominations open very soon, Friday week actually, the 19th of July. So they open then and they close on the 16th of August. That's 1 week, 1 month. Please don't leave lodging your nomination to the last minute. If there is a problem and you leave it lodging it to the last minute, and there's a problem, there's very little time to get it fixed. So they must be received by 12 noon on Friday the 16th of August. There are no exceptions to that. Unfortunately, at 12 o'clock, the doors closed, and that's the close of nominations. So what do you need? You need an official nomination paper. They will be available online, so you can download a nomination paper from voteauckland.co.nz. You can give my office a call and we can post one out to you. Or you can collect one from any of the 9 council service centres. But we do encourage you to download your nomination from the council website. It's now editable, so you can now type your information in, so it's nice and clear for us to read, and then you just print it out, sign it and submit it in hard copy. You must be nominated by 2 electors from the area that you're standing in. So if you're standing in for Albany Ward, for example, then you must be nominated by 2 electors from within Albany Ward. With your nomination paper, so you have an official nomination paper, you will also need to supply a number of other things, and they must all be supplied together. That's a nomination deposit of $200. That's for each position you are standing for, so $200 for each position. You can supply a candidate profile statement. It is optional under the legislation, but we do strongly suggest that every candidate submit a candidate profile statement. That's a 150-word statement basically about what you intend to do if you get elected, and a little bit about yourself, so that the electors who are voting will know a little bit about you there. A recent colour photograph that needs to be supplied. If you'd like that in there, we strongly encourage you to supply that as well. That goes with your 150-word statement, and that gets posted out to all the electors, so they basically read about you and see who you are. We also require evidence of New Zealand citizenship, because as I said earlier, you do need to be a New Zealand citizen to stand for office, so we do need evidence of that. And if you're standing for the District Health Board, we do need evidence of a conflict of interest statement.
Margaret, would you like to add on to that?
Yes, I would like to do a 1-minute advertising for Auckland Council election website, because when the nominations close, we will have all the candidate profiles on the website, and there will also be an opportunity for candidates to put more information there, so that voters actually are better informed and can make a more informed choice. So we're very excited to be able to offer that.
Excellent. And you can download the candidate information handbook from that website, can't you?
Yes, so all the information that will be in the handbook will be on the website as well.
Excellent. And Dale, we have a question here for you. The $200 nomination deposit, is this for each of the 2 required nominations, or $200 total?
No, it's for each position you stand for. So if you stand for 2 positions, it's $400, $200 each. Yes.
Okay. Excellent. So I assume once you've been confirmed as a candidate, the next step would be to start campaigning. Do we have any legal requirements in terms of campaigning?
Absolutely, we do. And things you need to be aware of really is that you can campaign anytime, so you can be campaigning now. You can actually campaign on election day, which is slightly different to parliamentary elections. If you are doing any promotion, any election advertising at all, you do need to show an authorisation statement. That's your name and your physical address, so that is a legal requirement. What we strongly suggest now is to use social media for your campaigning. It really is a great way to campaign. It's instant, it's free, it is far-reaching. You can use it many ways. You can promote yourself, your policies, you can post messages, you can put key dates on, you can run polls, you can do videos, all sorts of things on that, and it's pretty much free, so it's a really good way of campaigning. One of the legal things that you do need to be mindful of is the Auckland Transport Election Signs bylaws, so you just need to be mindful of the bylaws of where and when you can place election signs. There's a voluntary 9-week period for residential sites and approved road reserves, but on approved sites on parks it is a mandatory 9-week period for all local board areas except Aoraki, which is a 4-week period prior to election day. All those lists are contained on the voteauckland.co.nz website and in the candidate information booklet. Now, the second thing that you should be aware of as a candidate is that all candidates have a election expenditure limit, and this depends on the area that you're standing in, and it is based on population. So for the mayoral position, for example, there is a maximum limit that a mayoral candidate can spend of about 640,000. And all the limits do include GST, so don't get tripped up and think that it's plus GST. There is a required statutory form that you must complete, each candidate must complete after the election, and that is required as a public document for 7 years, so just be mindful that that is a requirement.
Excellent, thanks Dale. And to the two panellists who have actually campaigned, what does this look like? Can you talk us through what was effective for you, what was perhaps not so effective for you, and what should candidates be thinking about now? Michael?
Yeah, cool. I think I'll kick this off. I guess it's important. I don't think you should let the money side of it either stop you from running. And I give the example that for the last campaign that I ran, I essentially did it for free. I didn't get any donations, and 90% of it would have been on social media. So yeah, I don't think that should stop. I think everyone overcomplicates it, and I take on Dale's points that yeah, there's some legalities around it, but essentially there's no rules to campaigning. You can be as creative or as free as you want to engage your community, and I think a lot of people find comfort in just slipping into doing what everybody else does. And I really I discourage that. I think you can be experimental with this. My campaign experience will be different to everybody else's. I think it's really important you kind of do your own SWOT analysis of what you will be good at, what you wouldn't be good at, and clearly you're wired in a different way, as we probably are, that you want to run. So I think it's really important to be strategic, to engage your own communities. Don't try to play at a level or engage with communities you don't think are going to be combative or exclusive, or I think if you stick to your values, your morals, and your objectives, I think you'll find that you can make a bit of a game out of it and have fun with it. And I made the other point that I was very comfortable that if my community didn't elect me, it's because I wasn't the right person for them. And as long as I was stuck to what I was about, and that actually made campaigning a bit more fun, and I could be a bit more edgy and just be more myself. Because you might want to stand on a singular issue, a range, a laundry list. I've already seen some laundry lists of things you want to change, or actually you just might think you're a better representative of your community. So be very clear in what you want to do through the campaign and stick to it.
And what about you, Simon?
So I was a candidate 4 times and successful 3. And I guess each of those were really different campaigns. But the core thing that I'd say is it's the personal connections that you make. It's the way that you engage with people that is the most important bit of campaigns. I totally agree with Michael that you can spend a lot of money and not actually gain a lot in terms of the sort of campaign that you run. You want to engage with as many people as possible, be it door knocking, through social media, all those sorts of things, and you want to give people an opportunity to understand what you stand for and who you are. That's probably the most important thing. Also, when you're going to where people are, you're campaigning them with them, you're knocking on their door, you're going to their sports club or those sorts of things. Those are really important connections that serve you well. I guess the final thing that I would suggest in terms of campaigning, know what you're standing for. There are good opportunities now to go to local board meetings, to go to governing body meetings, to see what it's like to talk to elected members. Your community wants to know that you're going to hit the ground running, and I'd strongly suggest that people can usually tell whether or not you know what job you're going for during a campaign, so know.
And that whole campaign process sounds, I'm sure very fulfilling, quite exhausting. How did you two manage to look after yourselves during what I imagine is quite a hectic time in your life? Simon, you might want to speak to this one.
I guess the thing now is before nominations, while things are relatively calm, come up with a plan, figure out what you are going to do during the campaign, what your commitments are, and stick to it. it can sometimes feel in the middle of a campaign that you have to change everything, that everything needs to be mixed up, that you need to be responsive, but that actually that tends to just have impacts in terms of your health and your personal relationships. I'd strongly suggest that you make time for yourself and for your family and those people who are important. Block that time out. That's just as important for you as it is for those people you care about. Have a plan to eat well. There is a thing that's quite common in candidates, that you will gain weight because you eat terribly when you're running between meetings and those sorts of things. So have a plan for those sorts of things. I would, even though I agree with Michael and Dale that social media is really good, have a plan for how you're going to manage your exposure to social media. It can be quite a negative space, and it can have impacts on the way you feel about yourself. Part of that could be about organising your support base and being very clear about who's set up to look after you. I had people when I was spinning out that would take me for a walk, have a nice conversation, grab a cup of coffee. All those things are really, really important. And I guess the final thing that I would say is have a plan locked in advance for what you're going to do on election day and the 2 weeks after. If you win or lose, it's still going to be a stressful, hectic time, and having a plan that everyone knows that you've got locked into place for you to kind of deal with that is really important.
Excellent. Michael, have you got any tips?
Yeah, and reiterating a bit of that, planning is key to it. So being really clear on your objectives. Is it getting out a bunch of new voters that don't normally vote, or tapping into your different groups within your community and focus on those? And there's a lot of hours in the day. But eating right, fatigue management, but actually that, probably the mental side of it is the hardest. And you're putting yourself out there, like you're putting your head above the parapet, and you need to be realistic about that is going to bring, you've got, it's going to bring opinions and trolls and people who love what you're saying, and like the entire mix, right? So, it's hard, like as a board of directors or a governance, you have 90,000 bosses out there. So you really do need to prepare yourself for that. And I think making sure you keep going to the local on a Friday, whether it's your mentors or your sounding boards, or it is being realistic about that, and you will start to have to gear yourself to be more open to that. Water off a duck's back and all those types of cliches, but you do need to really watch that, and it's terrible for the partners, I think, of people who campaign. I think we're wired probably a bit differently to kind of cope for that. Partners are not, and so if anything, I think that your families, your groups, your cliques, they're the best way to kind of manage all that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great advice. We have a question, and it's actually very timely because I believe Margaret's just about to cover this, but I will read it out. So, will Vote Auckland be holding public candidate meetings for councillor and mayoral candidates? Margaret.
Okay, so what we call Meet the Candidates events. So the media, residents association, community groups, and some of the schools that will be engaged in our youth voting programs will organize candidates' nights, and there can be other meet the candidates for the community to see who is standing in the area, or actually candidate debates. And we really encourage you to take part to those, because there really will be an opportunity for your community to meet you face to face and really hear firsthand what you stand for and what you're campaigning on. Auckland Council will not be organising any of these candidate evenings directly. We will be supporting the schools again that are organising those through our youth voting program, but we will be advertising them on our website, so voteauckland.co.nz. So go on the website when we get to that point, so that you've got an opportunity to participate. We also have some tips for organisers of candidate evenings that we've developed that are available, and you can email us to ask for that. What I would encourage you to do as a candidate, if you're going to take part to these candidate evenings, is to have a look at our pre-election report. It's going to be published at the end of July, and it basically outlines the key challenges facing Auckland, and it'll be full of really useful information and interesting statistics and facts that will enable you to really prepare for those candidate evenings and be really informed about the real facts and campaign on real fact-based issues.
Great. So I have some more questions, and these are actually all, I believe, for Dale. So there's 4 here, so perhaps we'll do one at a time. If I have forgotten to add my authorisation statement on flyers that haven't been delivered, can I stamp it on the back of the flyer, or does it have to be on the front/main part of my flyer?
No, it can be on the flyer anywhere, but it must appear on it. So if you've already printed them without the authorisation, you have to bin them and get them printed with the correct authorisation.
Or stamp them, or stick it.
Or stamp them, but that must appear. Yeah.
Right, okay. And signage. So confirming, if I want to put a billboard on a private property, it can go up any time?
That is correct. We're encouraging a voluntary 9-week period, but technically yes.
Technically, okay. And please give a range of limits for investment, I think in terms of their campaign, for local board members and councillors and the mayor.
Expenditure limit, do you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mentioned the mayoral one, which was 650,000, I think it was. But they are all contained in the candidate information book. Each individual local board and ward is contained in there, what you can spend, yes.
Okay, excellent. That covers all of those questions. So moving on to post-election, I know that if I stood, the most important thing to me would be to know when if I was successful. So what's the process for confirming someone has been elected?
Right, so as I said earlier, voting closes at midday on Saturday the 12th of October. So we will have a progress result out about 2 o'clock that day, and that will contain all the votes, excluding special votes and votes hand-delivered on the Saturday morning. So it'll be about 95% of the votes cast. So that progress result, you'll pretty much know whether you're elected or not by 2 o'clock on election day afternoon. So we'll then have a preliminary result early on Sunday morning, and that will include all the votes that have been delivered on Saturday morning to the ballot boxes all around the region. And then we'll have a final result which will include all the special votes once we've had them verified, and that'll be Thursday afternoon on the 17th of October. So that's when the final declaration will be made on the 17th of October, and then we must by law place it in public notice in a newspaper, and that will be made on Monday the 21st of October, and the elected members then come into office on that following day, Tuesday the 22nd of October.
And Marguerite, who delivers the good news?
So if you are elected on Saturday the 12th of October, beginning of the afternoon, as soon as we've got the progress results, we will call you. So you'll get a call from Auckland Council. We'll obviously congratulate you, and we'll explain to you what happens from then on. And that will be followed by further correspondence that will give you a whole lot more details. A lot of, well, not a lot of, but several forms to fill where we need your information so that we can get you set up, and we'll give you all the key dates that you need to know about. So one thing to know is that although you come into office on the 22nd of October, which Dale just explained, you can't, as an elected member, make decisions, the decisions of council, until you're sworn in. And what that means is that you've got to make, by law, a statutory declaration at the inaugural meeting of either the governing body or the local board, depending on which body you're standing. And that's where you basically commit to serve your community. So between the time you are coming into office and the time you're sworn in, there's some onboarding activities that are going to take place. So I'll cover some of those, and then I'll pass on to Louise to explain what happens for the local board. So for all the elected members, There'll be a porphyry and a full-day symposium on the 24th of October, which we require all elected members to attend, and that's really to set the scene for the term. So for the governing body, the key dates to just make a note of at this time is between the weeks of this 17th and 24th of October. We've got the meet and greet. You can come to settle into your office, meet our staff, get your IT equipment, meet the mayor. If you're the new mayor, just settle in your office. And then on the 1st of November, at 5:30 in the town hall, we've got the inaugural meeting of the governing body. And that's very much quite a big ceremony, an opportunity really to celebrate with your family and whānau, and also to for the mayor to make their maiden speech, the inaugural speech, and then to be sworn in. And then that meeting is adjourned, and then is reconvened on the Tuesday after, so that's Tuesday the 5th of November at 9:30. And that's in effect the first business meeting where you start making decisions. And some of the first decisions you make at that meeting are membership of committees. The mayor will present the committee structure. And so there's a whole lot of sort of preliminary decisions that the governing body makes at this time. And then from then, really the normal business of the council starts with the normal schedule of committee meetings. And there's ongoing induction activities until Christmas with lots of information to absorb. So Louise, how about the local boards?
Yes, thanks Marguerite. So look, there's three aspects I want to talk about for local board members. So the first one is the Induction Program, and for local board members, that starts immediately following the declaration of results, and it runs part-time over the first 8 weeks. This is based at your local board office, and your local team will run this. So some of the things that will be covered will be an overview of your role as local board member, what you can expect, what you're doing, etc. It will help you prepare for the inaugural ceremony, support you with that. It will also help you prepare for electing your chair and deputy chair of your local board, and also looking at how you work together as an effective board, as well as the nuts and bolts that Marguerite talked about, like just the technology and other support that's needed. So that's the induction. Unlike the governing body, the swearing in and the first business meeting are actually the same for local boards. The chair and deputy chair are elected. We take an official photo, and it's also a celebration to actually mark your election to public office. It's actually a really nice event. These inaugural ceremonies for local boards are held between the 29th of October and the 6th of November, and they're usually in the afternoon, early evening, and take around about 3 hours. The last aspect Marguerite's mentioned already, and that's a symposium for all elected members. That's on the 24th of October, and local board members are required to attend that one-day symposium.
Excellent, cool, thank you Louise. So now we have question time, and we have a couple of questions that have come through. If you do have something that you want to ask one of our panellists that we haven't yet got to, or perhaps you want something clarified, you still have time. So while we're discussing these next questions, please feel free to use Slido to send those through. So we have one here. When will the nomination form be online, Dale?
Friday the 19th of July.
And that's next Friday.
It's next
Friday, there you
yes.
go. And one for Marguerite. Can the mayor pick any elected councillor to be their deputy?
Yes, they can. It is the decision of the mayor to appoint their deputy mayor, and that is very much one of the prerogatives of the mayor.
Mm-hmm. And so also for other committees, does the mayor control those elected positions in terms of chairs of committees?
So the mayor decides the committee structure, so how the governing body is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
usually, and it would be very unusual not to have committees of the whole. So these are committees, for instance, in this term, as an example, we've got Environment and Community Committee, and we've got the Planning Committee, and we've got Finance and Performance Committee. These are committees where all the councillors are members, and on those 3 committees we also have members of the Independent Māori Statutory Board. These committees make the more specialized decisions. So basically what they enable us to do is to theme the decisions a little bit more. That whole committee structure is decided by the mayor. And so, as I said, the committees of the whole, all the councillors sit on, but other committees, can be subcommittees of the governing body, and they don't necessarily have all the members of the governing body on them. And the process of choosing who sits on those committees belongs to the mayor, but there's very much a dialogue in terms of hearing from the councillors what they're interested in. So, you know, some examples would be Audit and Risk Committee, we've got a Regulatory Committee, or we've got a Civil Defence Committee, and then other sort of specialized committees. That's very much a dialogue. But it is the prerogative of the mayor to appoint the chairs of those committees.
And Louise, what about local boards? Who makes the decision in terms of chair?
Okie doke. So the board itself at that first meeting elects the chair and the deputy chair.
Okay, great. Oh, and I have 2 more. A lot for you, Dale. So 1, if I stand and get elected, what happens if I don't like it and want to resign? And Dale mentioned candidates need to include a deposit of $200. Has council set this amount, and is it refunded?
Okay, I'll take the second one first. That's what I can remember. The $200 is a deposit. It is set in legislation, so the council doesn't set that. It's a national deposit. Most candidates actually get that deposit back. For first past the post, if you poll less than 25% of the lowest successful candidate, that it is forfeited. But most candidates, as I said, get it refunded back. And the first question?
The first question was, if I stand and get elected, what happens if I don't like it and I want to resign?
Well, we'd encourage you to stay on, obviously, but we can't force anyone to stay on, and if they don't like it and they want to resign, they in fact can. Unfortunately, the legislation requires us to conduct a by-election for that position, which can, depending on the position, be quite an expensive outlay for ratepayers.
Yes, I can imagine. Here's an interesting one for you, Marguerite. You may not be able to answer this due to it being political, but I saw the billboards by one mayoral candidate saying he would fire the Auckland Transport Board. Does he actually have the power to do that?
So it is the governing body of one of its committees, depending on how the appointment of the board of council-controlled organisations. So the mayor decides the committee structure, and among that committee structure, there will be a committee that appoints the chair and the board members of council-controlled organisations. So one of the powers that the governing body has is to appoint those boards. So yes, an incoming mayor who wanted to change the membership of those boards could do that.
Okay, excellent. And for you two, from your personal experience being elected members, what was the best thing about being a representative for your community? Simon.
I'll kick off. The best thing is you actually get to see the community that you love in all its all its colours, all its wideness. It's a huge privilege to be able to kind of be part of your community in lots of different ways. You see it at very vulnerable moments, you see it in times of joy, you get to do some amazing things. One of the things I loved the most was as the chair of a local board, you get to, the technical thing is administer the oath of fealty to the Queen. but that is the that is I know. But that is the final step to give effect to people's citizenship, and I think I made it was about 5,000 or 6,000 new citizens, and you see people so excited to be here and so excited to be Kiwis, and you got to kind of experience that with their families and see your community excited. And there's no one that wants to be that isn't as there's nothing so excited as someone wanting to be part of your community and someone who's chosen that, and that's amazing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Michael?
Yeah, I think mine's two-part. I did it for serving, you know. So and you serve at all different levels. So to be able to serve and enable local stuff to happen, that was really neat. I always got into and I said I always wanted to put my thumbprint on what my city was going to be. I was, you know, a young professional. I didn't want to move overseas. I wanted to sort of create what I wanted here. And so to see some policies through and to go through boring things like the unitary plan change and to actually be able to influence and put your thumbprint on where your city's going is so rewarding. And I think the other part of it was probably to inspire others to participate in decision making and leadership, ensuring people that it's not, you know, it's not such this big beastie thing, like anyone can participate and get amongst it. So I think, you know, working in that kind of influence level, but then also in that quite strategic decision-making level, yeah.
Awesome. Another question here for Marguerite. On the same topic as the Mayor sacking the Auckland Transport Board, this seems to be a very interesting topic among you watchers out here. You pointed out the Mayor decides the committee structure, but wouldn't the Mayor need a majority vote on the committee that appoints the board?
Yes, they would. So obviously those decisions about who gets appointed to those boards gets made by the relevant committee, and that decision would have to be made by a majority. So that comes back to the point that Simon made earlier about each elected member is only one voice, but decisions get made by committee once the committee structure is set up, and there is a majority that is required for the decisions to pass.
Dale, I know you will be a busy man. I think you already are. But are you the go-to for any campaign questions, regardless of how small they may be, or should they be directed elsewhere initially?
No, absolutely. They come to me. I've got an open door, open phone line, email, any mechanism like that. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And rules around GoFundMe donations to campaign from general public, because they can be listed as anonymous.
Yes, well, any anonymous donation, this is a tricky one because any anonymous donation over $1,500 is forfeited, of course. So anything under $1,500 is fine. So there is a limit there. So candidates need to be aware of that. If it's something is anonymous, and it has to be truly anonymous. So the candidate can't just say it's anonymous. It actually has to be truly anonymous. Yep.
And that's per donation or in total?
No, in total of the $1,500, it can be a number of contributions to make up that $1,500, but it must limit it at $1,500.
Okay, well, I haven't received any other questions, so that might be us wrapping up. I'd really like to thank our panellists for being here with us this evening, for sharing your knowledge and your lived experience. It's so invaluable, and I know I've learnt something, and I definitely have a much better understanding of what the next months might look like for some of you. If you have any further questions or you want to read up on the things that we've been discussing, again, our elections website is voteauckland.co.nz. I believe there are some links up on the screen that you can note down. This is where you'll find all detailed information on both standing as a candidate and exercising your civic duty to vote and participate. For those of you watching, I hope this has been beneficial. I hope that you've learnt something, and I hope that you understand the whole process much better as a result. And not just that, I'd like to, on behalf of the panel, just commend you for considering standing. It's such an important thing to do, to consider representing your community at the local government level. So good luck for the future, and thank you again. Ngā mihi and tēnā koutou.